Howdy gamers. Just figured I'd do an update on what I've been up to. Just because, part of the devlog series. This is definitely going to be a bit more rambly and less technical than usual. Definitely more of a put it in the background thing than I think the videos tend to be normally. But if you're into that, keep listening. So the last week I haven't really touched any of the Dota mod code, but I did get a DM from someone who found the series and gave me some tips. And one of the more interesting things that they pointed out was this spawn map at position method. Previously I thought it wasn't possible to spawn like prefabs and stuff like that via code, because when I looked in the API I just looked for prefab, but it looks like this would let me do a lot of different things. Importantly, it would allow for like randomized maps, which could mean like procedurally generated / I guess roguelike type stuff, which would be, I think, pretty darn interesting potentially. It's something that I thought I just wouldn't be able to do with Dota mods, which is part of the reason I've been thinking some about doing something a bit more from scratch. And actually on that topic, something that I kind of need to do every now and then is convince myself that it's still a good idea to stick with doing stuff as a Dota mod, since my programming skills are like pretty strong, and there's definitely some sources of frustration I get using the Dota stuff. Mostly a lot of it's not documented particularly well. This is actually one of the best documented methods in this entire API now that I think about it, just because the parameters actually have an explanation of what they're supposed to be in, some constraints and stuff. But anyways, so some of the things that I'd be looking for if I were to do something more from scratch is an engine where it'd be capable to do, or where it would be an option to do Steam networking, just because I wouldn't want to expect people to be able to forward ports and stuff like that, but also I wouldn't want to host a dedicated server, at least not at first. Obviously networking capability. Performance is a bit of a nebulous thing here. I think it'd be really cool to be able to run on a Raspberry Pi, but I realize that's probably not super realistic depending on the scope of the game. Controller support would just be nice for possible future other games that like aren't Erbs 2, because I don't think Erbs would work as a controller game unless it switched like battle right controls or something like that. But like the biggest thing is really just Linux editor support. The Dota mod tools don't load under Linux, which I use for literally everything else nowadays. And I have kind of a jank setup. That's part of why I've had some difficulties like recording myself working on the mod, because I'm trying to do it like via a capture card, because my microphone and everything else is connected to my main computer, but I do weird stuff to use the other one. Basically I use a program called Barrier that shares the mouse and keyboard from my main computer with that one, which has some of its own quirks that are really bad for trying to use the map editor at times, but I don't need to get more into that. Obviously it'd be good if it could support mods in a sensible way, just because user-generated content is like one of the best things for the longevity of games. Just see Rhythm Games as an example. 3D assets, just because I need to be able to import other stuff, which admittedly like can be done with the Dota stuff. It's just you kind of need to find tutorials and stuff to figure out how to do that, although I've already done that with the cubes. Waveform collapse is something I thought wasn't possible with Dota stuff, just because you couldn't load elements of the map until more recently. But basically this is just a method for procedurally generating some stuff to make it look cool. Strong typing is heavily preferred, just because I prefer issues at compile time instead of runtime, and headless server would need to be possible in case things got like big enough to make like having a lobby and other stuff make sense. So some of the stuff I've been thinking out is basically just things that can run in Java land, just because I've done a lot of Java programming, or stuff compatible with Rust, just because it's something that interests me. And then also just Godot, because that's very Linux friendly, and used by a lot of people, very large user base. So a lot of these are pretty good on all fronts, or at least kind of serviceable for the most part. The main thing here for like Godot, and the reason I say it's like unsafe, is kind of the out of the box mod / patch mechanism. allows for just any GD script to be executed, and my understanding is that like allows access to the file system, like, which could be extremely malicious if it's, you know, not from a trusted source. So that seems like not really an option. I assume that everything that's basically just a regular programming language can support mods, just because that could be done in a custom way. So at least like as far as this table goes, there's not anything that's like a super clear winner. Like Corgi and JMonkey seem to be like kind of weaker among them, and they kind of end up being that too once we get into some other more, I guess, qualitative stuff. But yeah, in terms of ordering, if I jump ship on the Dota thing, I'd probably go for like Bevy with Rust, just because it's something that interests me first. Then libgdx, just because, actually, I'm gonna remove this. This is from a while ago. Libgdx, just because it's been used for some actual games, and then Godot with Rust, or maybe just regular Godot, just because it has a huge user base. I'm actually kind of getting into the other metric I was thinking of for like kind of how to decide stuff is just looking at their showcases, because like, you know, this is cool. It shows like a lot of stuff has been done, but to my knowledge, like none of this is commercial stuff, which, you know, isn't something that's like 100% needed. But I think there being commercial stuff is like a sign that like people that need to do stuff professionally and get stuff done are willing to use and try it, which makes me think that it would be something more worth looking into using and trying, basically. JMonkey is another thing that could be JVM. And if you look at their showcase, I just like clicked on the Skullstone thing because it sounded cool, you know, sounded kind of metal. But then if you go over to their website, it's, you know, is making note of Steam Greenlight, which I didn't think was around anymore, and clicking on this is like a broken link. And, you know, I would think that JMonkey would want their showcase to be stuff people could actually see, which makes me much more averse to trying it out. So that's just like something not in favor of JMonkey in particular. libgdx actually has some impressive things that have been released, like most notably Slay the Spire, because that's a really fun game. That's something that, you know, is and has been sold on Steam, and then, you know, just other stuff that has been sold commercially. So that speaks pretty well of like what you can do with libgdx. And then Godot, obviously there's just a lot of stuff. It has a huge user base, a lot of just, you know, hobby stuff, a lot of stuff like sold on Steam. You know, they just got a whole lot to talk about. And then Bevy, it's got some like tech demo stuff, but it's like very early access. Honestly, if I needed to just get stuff done, I would just skip Bevy entirely and probably go with libgdx, just because like people actually use this to make like commercial games, and I have like a lot of experience with the Java stuff. I was actually pretty surprised by Slay the Spire being a Java thing, and I went and looked in the files, and sure enough, it comes bundled with the Java runtime environment just so that the game can run. So I was pretty impressed with that. But yeah, so definitely in the short term, I don't think I'm going to be moving away from like the Dota mod option. Partly just because I think it'd be good to iterate at least a little bit more, just because if I were to switch gears, it would be such a long time before I could actually try different stuff and prototype more, just because I need to get so much basic stuff done. But in the meantime, I might see what networking looks like for some of these, just to like play around with it a little bit, because if it's not actually that bad, I might do this like kind of in parallel just a little bit from time to time just for fun, or something else. Because like quite honestly, like the Linux editor thing is like one of the biggest reasons I don't do more modding, is because modding means getting the jank set back up and doing other stuff and having to do stuff through a different computer via whatever stuff, and it just kind of feels bad and it's not as convenient as I would like it to be. But anyways, I think that's going to be it for now. If you watched all the way through, thank you very much. And I'll see you around.